This Part 2 Episode 52. The Misty Cloud Mountain was still the Misty Cloud Mountain from back then. However, the Misty Cloud sect located on it had changed drastically from back then. The entire mountain peak was filled with a countless number of patrols. Anyone who stepped into it would be immediately observed by the hidden gazes. It was just like a mountainous fortress with extremely tight defenses. This place was the enormous camp of the Misty Cloud sect. Due to the Misty Cloud sect have recruited a large number of disciples, the current Misty Cloud sect was undoubtedly much larger than it was compared to 3 years ago. This was the reason that they had enough people to truly put in place a tight defensive line, with sentries 3 steps apart all over this enormous mountain peak. Although the strength of the sect had become much stronger, not only did the outsiders, but also some of those Misty Cloud sect's disciples sensed that the current Misty Cloud sect was no longer the place. Viewed by every person within the Xiao Empire as a training holy ground. After 3 years of varying actions by the Misty Cloud sect, they had already become no different than an ordinary faction, using all fair and foul means in order to expand their strength. The enormous base of the sect extended all the way to the edge of their site on the peak of the Misty Cloud Mountain. Human figures were rushing about on the enormous open ground. Various curses and sounds of colliding blades gathered together. Even quite a bit of the faint fog that lingered in the sky had been expelled. The training holy ground back then no longer possessed that kind of ethereal and extraordinary atmosphere. Everyone in the hall could not help but straighten their bodies after Yunshan opened his mouth to speak. One of them hesitated for a moment before he replied respectively, "Sect leader, Yun Fan has not sent any news back. I think that he is still waiting for an opportunity. It is just the Zhengui Pass, yet he actually needs to procrastinate to such an extent." Yun Shan knit his brows slightly and said, "Send this order to him. He must control the Zhengui Pass within 5 days. Additionally, order the others in the remaining places to act according to the situation. We will not need to worry about them stirring any waves." "Yes, sir." Everyone hurriedly responded upon hearing Yun Shan's orders. Cuckoo. Sect leader has made decisive and bold decisions these years. Without realizing it, the Misty Cloud sect's disciples have already seeped into all the major cities within the Xiao Empire. As long as the order is given when the time comes, it is likely that over half of the territory of the Xiao Empire will belong to us, the Misty Cloud sect. A middle-aged man spoke to Yun Shan with a smile. That smile was a flattering one. This is merely the first step. The footsteps of our Misty Cloud sect will not stop at the Xiao Empire. Once we completely control the Xiao Empire, the Misty Cloud sect's strength will definitely soar. At that time, there would likely be no other factions within this northwestern region of the Do-Chi continent who can contend with us. At that time, we only need to wait for the Misty Cloud sect to become the overlords of the northwestern region. It is only a matter of time for us to truly dominate the continent. Yun Shan laughed. His eyes was filled with a wild ambition that did not match his age. Cuckoo, sect leader is right. At last, our Misty Cloud sect could at the very most be considered a mid-tier faction in the southwestern region faction's grand meeting. I think that by the time of the next meeting, we will definitely cause the eyeballs of those who say our Misty Cloud sect is short-sighted to fall off. Agreeing laughter quickly followed behind Yun Shan's words. Yundu, Yun Shou, the both of you will lead the troops to completely eliminate the Primer clan this time around. Remember, after you have eliminated the Primer clan, you must find the remaining members of the Xiao clan. Yun Shan's gaze looked toward a corner of the hall, and cried out in a low voice. "Yes, sir." 2 old men, who had remained quiet in one corner, swiftly stood up and respectfully replied, when they heard Yun Shan's orders. Although these 2 old men kept a low profile, they clearly possessed quite a high position within the Misty Cloud sect. This could be seen from how the voices in the hall became much weaker after they stood up. Elders Yundu and Yun Shou had broken through to the Do Huang class with the help of sect leader during these 3 years. That Hai Budong won't be able to create much trouble with these 2 people around. The person who was reporting earlier smiled and spoke when he saw these 2 old men. Stand up. Yundu and Yusha also smiled when they heard the somewhat fawning words. They immediately looked at one another. A strange black glow flashed through their eyes without leaving a trace behind. Your mission is to exterminate the Prima clan and to search for the remaining members of the Xiao clan. It is likely that the other factions within the capital will not dare to intervene. Of course, if there are any factions who are blind, you can just exterminate them together. Yun Shan's gaze slowly swept across the entire place as he spoke in a faint voice. Yundu and Yunsha once again nodded after hearing this. Yun Shan leaned his body on the soft chair after he had given all his instructions. He waved his hand and said, "Since that is the case, everyone should return to their posts. We will first eliminate the Prima clan." During this period of time, everyone in the hall hurriedly nodded after hearing these words, dismissing them from Yun Shan. They immediately stood up, bowed to Yun Shan, and slowly withdrew from the large hall. Yun Shan's face trembled slightly. The imposing and powerful manner of Yun Shan from earlier could only nod his head in a somewhat displeased manner at this moment. He said, "But what if we still cannot find the thing that you want after killing all the members of the Xiao clan? The Xiao clan is definitely in possession of the thing that we need. However, we don't know exactly who is holding on to it. If we cannot find it here, we can only go and search for Xiao Yan who fled the Jioma Empire." Xiao Yan. Yun Shan possessed a deep memory of this name. Hence, his expression became somewhat unnatural when he heard it. He said, "There has not been much news about that brat during these 3 years. He might have long died in some unknown place." TSK, I'm afraid that I will have to disappoint you." The black fog immediately emitted a strange laugh when he heard this. "I have received some news from the hall some time earlier. Xiao Yang's trail was found in the Black Corner region, which is thousands of kilometers from the Jioma Empire. Moreover, that fellow's strength is already sufficient to kill expert Do Huangs." Kill Do Huangs? How is that possible? Yun Shan's expression immediately changed. He stood from his chair in shock as he let out an involuntary cry. Although that fellow had displayed a kind of extremely powerful Fire Lotus Do skill to kill Yunling, whose strength was that of a Do Wang, but killing a Do Huang was a completely different concept. The gap between them was as different as the heavens and earth. This is nothing impossible. Back then, it was a mistake for you to allow him to flee from the Jioma Empire. HMPH, in the future, you might really end up being killed by that brat's hands. The voice from the black fog was dark and cold. Yun Shan's face twitched. A denseness surged into his eyes as he spoke in a sinister manner. "So what if he can kill a Do Huang? Back then, I forced him to flee like a dog that had lost its home. This time around, I can do the same. In that case, I will wish you luck. However, it is best that you capture all of the remaining members of the Xiao clan before this. Otherwise, the hall's chief will really be angry." The black fog drifted around aimlessly. It left behind a cold laugh before it strangely disappeared with a ripple. When he heard the 2 words, "hall's chief," the face of even someone as powerful as Yun Shan became somewhat pale. He looked at the spot where the black fog had disappeared and he tightened his fist slowly. A dense, cold glint flashed in his eyes. "This time around, I will definitely finish off the entire Xiao clan." The Jioma Sacred City was the capital city of the Jioma Empire. Being the most bustling city of the entire empire, the human flow that it consumed and released each day had reached quite a frightening number. However, this bustling city had a somewhat pressuring atmosphere at this moment. There was the faint suppressed feeling of a storm brewing. Such a feeling was naturally spread and created by the Prima clan, which had suddenly announced a temporary closure of all its auction houses and shops. This action, by one of the 3 large clans of the empire, undoubtedly indicated to everyone that quite a big trouble would fall on their heads. The public did not lack some people who were well informed. Hence, there were some rumors spread that the Misty Cloud sect had plans to exterminate the Prima clan. This rumor immediately stirred up quite a big commotion within the city the moment it spread. The people of the Jioma Empire could clearly see that the Misty Cloud sect was becoming increasingly arrogant these couple of years. Moreover, other than the imperial family, the only faction within the entire Geomar Empire that could cause the Primer clan, who had become the top of the three large clans, to act so cautiously was likely only the Misty Cloud sect, which was a short distance from the capital. While human figures were rushing about all over the mansion, the atmosphere in the spacious meeting room in the center of the mansion was extremely tense. Everyone seated in that place were the core members of the Primer clan. At this moment, their expressions were mostly ugly. Of course, it was likely anyone in the Geomar Empire, who suddenly become a target of the Misty Cloud sect, would have difficulty forming a smile on their faces. Fei, is the news that the Misty Cloud sect is about to attack our Primer clan true? An old man in the hall frowned and inquired softly. All the gazes in the hall shot toward the pretty woman, who was seated in the leader's seat, when they heard the old man's question. The latter's enchantingly beautiful face was also covered with a solemn expression at this moment. She nodded slightly in the face of everyone's eyes and said, "First Elder, this news is indeed true. It is likely that the Misty Cloud sect will really act within 2 days." Primer Tingshan slowly sighed when he heard Fei's words. He descended into a silence amid the desperate state of the clan. All of this is because of those fellows from the Xiao clan. If we did not help them, we would not have offended the Misty Cloud sect and the problems today would not occur. A somewhat sharp voice sounded under the pressure brought by the 3 words Misty Cloud sect. Quite a number of agreement immediately followed when the voice sounded. Clearly, they were finally unable to suppress the thought in their hearts when disaster struck. "All of you shut up." Primer Tingshan immediately became furious when he heard the noise in the meeting room. His palm slammed violently onto the table. The sudden loud sound shocked everyone into being quiet. Primer Tingshan looked at the calm-faced man, who was seated in a wheelchair beside him after suppressing everyone. He immediately glanced at the somewhat icy-cold face of Hai Budong with his eyes shut beside Fei. He let out a bitter laugh and said, "Mr. Xiao Ding, my clan members have lost themselves and allowed you to see a joke." Xiao Ding smiled and shook his head when he heard Primer Tingshan words. His gaze slowly swept over everyone's faces. Anyone who exchanged gazes with him would involuntarily shift their gaze away a moment later. Although this man's legs were currently crippled, everyone would involuntarily feel some chillness for some unknown reason when they looked at the face where a faint smile was hung. His clan was nearly destroyed and he had been turned into a state where he became a cripple who could only rely on his wheelchair. These sudden changes were sufficient to cause any ordinary person to become crazy. However, this man appeared to be totally unaffected. That manner was as though he was without emotion. This kind of person was indeed very frightening. "First Elder Tingshan, this matter is indeed related to our Xiao clan." Xiao Ding laughed. His gaze swept toward Primer Tingshan as he said, "If the Misty Cloud sect really wants to attack the Primer clan, you can hand me or even half of the clan members to them. After which, you can announce that these are all the remaining people of the Xiao clan. Please try to think of a way to quietly let the other clan members leave. The Xiao clan might be met with a great calamity, but some of our blood must remain." Primer Tingshan's eyelids also twitched at Xiao Ding's words. He deeply looked at the smiling Xiao Ding before he quietly spoke in his heart. He might be young, but he has stayed absolutely rational. The Xiao clan need not be worried that it cannot prosper with such talent. Unfortunately, little fellow Xiao Ding, you can rest assured that no one will hand you over. Even if I have to risk this old life of mine and half of the Primer clan, the old me will ensure nothing will happen to you. An ice-cold voice suddenly sounded. Everyone raised their heads and saw that Hai Budong had unknowingly opened his eyes. Those somewhat lush blue eyes had a cold glint currently flickering in them. Everyone who had any objection had no choice but to wisely swallow the words in their mouth in the face of this cold glint. Old Hai Xiao Ding was startled. His eyes, which were like an old well without ripples, also began to fluctuate a little. He clearly understood in his heart that if Fei and Hai Budong had not tried their best to protect them within the Primer clan, it was likely that the Xiao clan would have already lost their protection. However, he did not expect that Hai Budong was still this stubborn after things had developed until this stage. He was even willing to lose half of the Prima clan. Old Hai, are you still waiting for third brother to return? Xiao Ding laughed bitterly before he softly sighed. At this moment, even he no longer had such a great confidence. Perhaps, he could only hope that Xiao Yan would be able to return in the future, and help take revenge for the Xiao clan. Ha ha, I have confidence in that fellow, Hai Budong laughed out loud. His gaze immediately glanced at Prima Tingshan by the side and coldly snorted, all of you only know how to be short-sighted like a mouse. Do you think that the Misty Cloud sect has really decided to attack us, the Prima clan, because of the Xiao clan? It is not as though you are unaware of their activities these few years. The three large clans of the empire, and even the imperial family. HMPH, just wait and see who will be able to luckily escape. Prima Tingshan was silent. He immediately laughed bitterly and sighed. How could he not be aware that the current Misty Cloud sect was showing signs of cleaning up the factions in the empire? However, it would be for the best if they could delay this a little longer. He might think in this manner within his heart, but he did not dare to give voice to it. Hai Budong was the true grand elder within the clan. There was no doubt about his credit in enabling the Prima clan to possess its current status. Even he dared not dispute him. Of course, if Hai Budong did not possess such a great reputation within the Prima clan, with just Ya Fei's ability alone, she would have difficulty controlling the clan regardless of how capable she was. What should we do now? Why don't we request for help from the Mu clan, Nalan clan, the Alchemist Association, or the Imperial family? Prima Tingshan sighed again. It's useless, Ya Fei shook her head. Her delicate finger gently knocked on the table as her bright eyes swept over the large hall. She said, the Misty Cloud strength is currently too great. Ya Fei raised her eyes, turned her head and spoke to Prima Tingshan, First Elder, in order to prepare for the worst. I have already quietly sent some of the younger generations of our Prima clan out of the capital to protect our clan's bloodline. If it really comes to that stage, I'm afraid that other than surrender, we can only fight to our deaths. Girl, you have indeed thought ahead to actually prepare our clan's escape route. However, that kind of situation is also too terrible. Prima Tingshan was startled when he heard this. It seemed that he had just become aware of these things. Surrender, I don't think that our ending will be any good if we do so. Bang. Prima Tingshan sighed again. He was just about to speak, when the entire Jioma Empire's sky suddenly emitted a rolling thunder-like explosion. The explosion continued on endlessly, causing the entire city's gaze to be thrown onto the sky. At this moment, a cloud that was agglomerated from energy was formed at the source of the explosion. By the side of the cloud was a longsword that was emitting a sharp aura as it pierced straight into the former. This is the Misty Cloud sect's signal. The entire city erupted into waves of exclamation as they looked at the special energy mark in the sky. Some sensitive people displayed shocked faces. Did this Misty Cloud sect really want to attack the Prima clan? Quite a number of people swarmed out of the hall within the Prima clan. They looked at the mark in the sky and their expressions immediately turned pale white. Prima clan, hand over the remaining members of the Xiao clan. Otherwise, today will be the day your clan is eliminated. A cold, indifferent cry was carried by a powerful Do Chi as it resounded like thunder throughout the entire Jioma sacred city not long after the mark appeared. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.